In the year 303 AD, the Roman Emperor Diocletian issued what historians call the Great Persecution. Churches were burned. Scriptures were destroyed. Christians were dragged into arenas to be torn apart by wild animals. The goal? To erase Christianity from the face of the earth. But something unexpected happened. Instead of dying out, the church exploded. By the time persecution ended, Christianity had grown from a small movement of around 5 million believers to become the dominant religion of the entire Roman Empire. How is that even possible? This is a story that defies human logic. A story where weakness became strength, where death became life, and where the very thing meant to destroy a movement fueled its greatest expansion. Welcome to Soulway, where we explore the untold stories that shaped our world. Today, we're diving into one of history's greatest paradoxes. Why did the early Christian church grow faster under brutal persecution than it ever did under peace and freedom? The answer reveals something profound, not just about history, but about human nature, faith, and the mysterious ways movements spread against all odds. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover might challenge everything you thought you knew. Let's start with the facts. In the year 100 AD, there were approximately 25,000 Christians in the entire world. Most of them were in small, scattered communities across the Roman Empire, meeting in secret, hiding their faith, constantly looking over their shoulders. Fast forward 200 years to 300 AD, despite waves of persecution, despite emperors who made it their mission to wipe out Christianity, despite executions, torture, and social exclusion, the number of Christians had grown to somewhere between 5 and 7 million people. That's not just growth. That's a 200-fold increase during the darkest period of Christian history. Now here's where it gets interesting. After Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity in 313 AD, you'd expect the church to explode even faster, right? No more fear, no more hiding. Freedom to worship openly. But the rate of growth actually slowed down. Historians and scholars have been puzzling over this for centuries. Why would a religion thrive under the sword, but plateau under the laurel wreath? The answer lies in understanding what persecution actually did to the early church. And it's not what you might think. Imagine you're a Roman governor in the year 250 AD. You've just received orders from the emperor. Arrest every Christian leader in your city. Shut down their gatherings. Make an example of them. You carry out the orders. You think you've crushed the movement, but what actually happens? The Christians scatter. They flee to neighboring towns, to rural villages, to provinces you've never even thought about. And everywhere they go, they take their message with them. This wasn't a defeat, it was a dispersal. The book of Acts in the Bible actually records this pattern from the very beginning. When persecution broke out in Jerusalem, the believers were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria, and they went everywhere preaching the word. What the persecutors saw as destruction, the Christians experienced as mission. Think about it. Before persecution, most Christians stayed in their comfortable communities. They worshipped together, but they didn't necessarily spread out. Persecution forced them to move, and movement meant the message moved with them. From Rome to North Africa, from Greece to Gaul, from Egypt to Persia. Every wave of persecution created a new wave of missionaries, not by choice, but by necessity. And here rests the twist. People in these new regions were often more receptive than those in the big cities. Why? Because they saw Christians who had lost everything for their faith, yet still held on to it. That kind of conviction is contagious. Now, let's talk about something uncomfortable: death. The Roman authorities had a theory. They believed that if they made Christianity dangerous enough, if they killed believers publicly and brutally, people would be too terrified to join. But the exact opposite happened. There's a famous quote from the early church father Tertullian, written around 200 AD. He said, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church." At first, this sounds like poetic exaggeration, but the historical evidence backs it up. Let me paint you a picture. You're a pagan Roman citizen. You've been raised to believe that the gods demand your loyalty, that the emperor is divine, that power and survival are what matter most. Then one day you're in the Colosseum. The crowd is roaring, and they bring out a group of Christians, men, women, sometimes even children, to be executed. You expect them to beg for mercy, to renounce their faith, to save themselves, but instead they're singing hymns, praying for their executioners, facing death with a calmness, even a joy. that you've never seen before. Some of them are torn apart by lions, others are burned alive, but not one of them curses. Not one of them recants. You go home that night and you can't sleep, because you've just witnessed something that doesn't fit into your worldview. You've seen people die for something they believed was more valuable than life itself. And you start to wonder, what do they know that I don't? Historical records tell us that many conversions happened this way. The very spectacle designed to terrify people into submission instead became the most powerful evangelistic tool the church had. Because you can fake a lot of things, but you can't fake the way you die. The martyrs didn't argue theology, they demonstrated it. And that demonstration was more convincing than 1,000 sermons. But there's another dimension to this story that often gets overlooked. Persecution didn't just spread the church. It purified it. When Christianity was dangerous, only the truly committed stayed. There was no social advantage to being a Christian. No business connections. No political power. In fact, you could lose your job, your property, even your family. So the people who remained, they were all in. This created communities of remarkable unity and devotion. They took care of each other. When plague struck cities and wealthy pagans fled, Christians stayed behind to nurse the sick, even pagans. When natural disasters hit, Christians pooled their resources to help strangers. The Roman world had never seen anything like it. The Emperor Julian, who tried to revive paganism in the 4th century, actually complained about this. He wrote, in frustration, "The impious Galileans support not only their own poor but ours as well." He saw it as a problem. But it was actually the secret to Christianity's growth. People weren't just attracted to Christian beliefs. They were attracted to Christian community. To a way of life that said, you matter, regardless of your status. You belong regardless of your background. You're loved regardless of your past. And persecution? It intensified all of this. When you can't rely on government protection, you rely on each other. When you can't build impressive buildings, you build impressive relationships. When you can't display your faith publicly, you live it privately. And that authenticity becomes magnetic. Here, that's a question worth considering. What do you think mattered more to the growth of the early church? The theology they preached, or the lives they lived? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's fast forward to 313 AD. Constantine issues the Edict of Milan. Christianity is legalized. No more persecution, no more fear. Believers can worship openly, build churches, hold positions of power. This should be the golden age, right? And in many ways, it was. Christianity spread even further. It became the official religion of the empire. But something was lost. When Christianity became safe, it also became convenient. People started converting not because they'd counted the cost and found it worth paying, but because it was now socially advantageous. Bishops became political figures. Churches became wealthy institutions. The intensity, the purity, the radical commitment that characterized the persecuted church began to dilute. This isn't to romanticize suffering. Persecution was real, brutal, and traumatic. But it did something that prosperity couldn't. It separated the genuine from the superficial. Today, we see this pattern repeated across the world. In countries where Christianity is persecuted, places like Iran, North Korea, certain regions of China, the church is growing faster than almost anywhere else. Not because persecution is good, but because it creates the conditions where faith has to be real, or it's nothing at all. Meanwhile, in many Western nations where Christianity faces no persecution, church attendance is declining. Freedom didn't kill faith, but it removed the filter that kept it sharp. So what's the lesson in all of this? Maybe it's that the things we think will destroy something valuable, hardship, opposition, suffering, arrest at times, the very things that reveal its true strength. The early church didn't grow because persecution was good. Sometimes the very things that reveal its true strength. The early church didn't grow because persecution was good. It grew because persecution revealed what was already there, a faith so deep, a community so strong, and a message so compelling that even death couldn't silence it. The question this raises for us, regardless of our faith or background, is profound. What do we believe in strongly enough that we'd hold on to it even if it cost us everything? Because history shows us that the things worth having are often the things we're willing to suffer for. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Have you seen this pattern in other movements or causes? What makes something grow stronger under pressure? Let me know in the comments below. If this video gave you a new perspective, share it with someone who might find it thought-provoking. And if you want more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world, this is what we do here at Soul Way.